Hi guys, during the last couple of weeks we've been looking at part-whole problems. Week 1 we didn't know the whole amount, and week 2 we didn't know one of the parts. What we're going to do today is we're learning to analyse and solve part-whole problems. That means that I'm not going to tell you whether it's the whole amount or the part that we're looking at. I want you to draw the bars in order to represent the problem and make that decision for yourself. The first thing I'd like you to do is have a look at the two bars that we've got in front of us. So there's one where we don't know the whole amount and one where we don't know one of the parts. And what I'd like you to do is not necessarily answer those questions. I want you to come up with questions that would fit those bars. So for example, the first one, I know I've got part, we've got 14. The other part, we've got 9, and we're looking for the whole amount. I want to come up with a question that fits that bar. So here's my attempt. We've got Harry and Hermione, and it says Harry has 14 chocolate frogs, Hermione has 9 chocolate frogs. How many do they have altogether? Once you've done that, once you've come up with the question, then you can go ahead and answer it. So there's my 14, there's my 9, and I'm going to apply one of the strategies that we looked at over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to count on, so I'm going to start at 14, I'm going to add those 6 to get 20, and then add those 3 to get 23. Let's have a look at the next one. So here we've got a part-whole problem where we know one part is 7, we know the whole amount's 20, but we don't know the other part. And once again, I want you to come up with problems that match that bar. So here's my attempt again. Here's Ron. It says, Ron had 20 chocolate frogs. He ate 7 of them. How many does he have left? And again, once you've come up with the problem, then you can go ahead and solve it using one of the strategies we've looked at. So there are 7 chocolate frogs. Let's count on 3 to get to 10, and then count on 10 to get to 20. So how many does he have left? He's got 13 left. Okay, so what I want you to do is pause the video and see if you can come up with as many different problems as you can to each of those part-whole bars. Okay, so what I'd like you to do next is I want you to read the following problem, and I want you to take 1 or 2 minutes to have a go and see what answer you can come up with. You can draw pictures, you can use resources, but I'd like you to have a go at this on your own. Okay, so here was the problem. I have 12 sweets. I share 3 sweets with my friend. How many sweets do I have now? That sounds like quite a simple question. Believe it or not, that's a question that a lot of people get wrong. And they don't get it wrong because they're not good at maths. They get it wrong because they don't analyse the question properly. A lot of people get a wrong answer of 4. And the reason they get the wrong answer of 4 is because they see this word share. And they think to themselves, well, share means I have to divide, so I'll divide 12 by 3. Now, we're going to answer this problem, but we're going to analyse it first. So let's do that using a bar. So here, I'm going to start with my bar, and that represents the whole amount. And what's the whole amount in this case? It's the 12 sweets that I start with. And then what do I do with those sweets? Well, I give some away and I keep some. So I'm going to split my bar into 2 parts. Here we've got some that I share with my friend, and here's what I'm left with. And you can see that if I start with 12 sweets, I share 3 with my friend, I'm left with 9. Now, I don't want you to worry if you got that wrong. We learn from our mistakes in maths, and that's a very common mistake to make. And it's not because you're not good at maths, it's because you've not analysed that properly. So we're going to learn to analyse problems using bars to help us. It's time to get investigating with a partner. And this week, although I do want you to solve these problems, what I'd like you to do initially is I want you to analyse them. I want you to draw the bar in order that you can show me that you understand what the problem's asking you to do in the first place. And in order to do that, you're going to draw the bar, you're going to describe the whole amount, You're going to split it into parts and then you're going to describe those parts. We'll look at the first one together. Draco has 16 jelly slugs. How many does he have altogether if his mum gives him 12 more? Next question. Hagrid has 21 dragon eggs. 12 of them hatch. How many dragon eggs are still to hatch? Next question. Professor Slughorn had some bat wings. He used 15 of them in a potion and had 17 left. How many did he start with? And then lastly, Harry needs 34 golden galleons to buy a new broomstick. He's saved 18 galleons so far. How many more does he need? Now you can pause the video now and have a go at those, or we can look at the first one and analyse it together. So let's have a think about this. Draco has 16 jelly slugs. How many does he have altogether if his mum gives him 12 more? To begin with, when we analyse that problem, let's start by drawing the bar. And the next thing that we can do is we can describe what the whole amount is. We might not know what the value is, but we can always say what it is. We can always describe it in words. And here, it's how many jelly slugs Draco ends up with. Next, we're going to decide how many parts to split it into. We're going to split it into 2 parts because he's got 16 jelly slugs to begin with and he gets 12 more. So he's got some to begin with and he gets some more from his mum. So we've got 2 parts there. And we can describe them as what he starts with and what he gets from his mum. Lastly, we can put in the values that we know. And in this case, we know that he starts with 16 and we know that he gets 12 from his mum. What we don't know is the whole amount, which is how many slugs he ends up with. Once you've done that, then you can have a go at solving it. And I know there are some of you who are thinking, I could solve that to begin with anyway without analysing it, without drawing that bar. But if we draw the bar, if we learn to analyse problems in this way, it's really going to help us solve much more complex problems as we go through school. Hopefully you've had a chance to analyse those, you've had a chance to draw the bars, and you've had a go at solving them using some of the strategies that we've looked at over the past couple of weeks. Let's have a look at the remaining 3 problems then. So the next problem was, Hagrid has 21 dragon eggs, 12 of them hatch. How many dragon eggs are still to hatch? So here we can start by drawing the bar, and we can then describe what the whole amount is. We might not know the value of the whole amount each time, but we can always describe what it is. And in this case, it's how many dragon eggs that Hagrid starts with. The next thing we need to do is decide how many parts we're going to split it into. And here we've got 2 parts because we've got the number that hatch and the number that are still to hatch. Once we've done that, we can then put in the values that we know. And in this case, we knew that he starts with 21 eggs and we know that 12 eggs hatch. So you can see here we've got a part whole problem where we know the whole amount and we know one of the parts, so we're trying to work out the other part. Once you've analysed that, that means that you can apply one of the strategies that you looked at over the last couple of weeks in order to solve that. And by drawing that bar, it's going to help you make that decision. Let's have a look at the next question. Professor Slughorn had some bat wings. He used 15 of them in a potion and had 17 left. How many did he start with? So once again, we're going to draw the bar. And just like before, we can describe the whole amount. We might not know how much it is, but we can always describe it. And here it's the number of bat wings that Professor Slughorn starts with. Then we're going to decide on the number of parts, and I know that each of these are part wholes. I've already told you 2 parts, but the reason that there's 2 parts is because we've got the number of bats that he uses in the potion, and we've also got the bats that are left over. Once we've described the parts, we've described the whole amount, then we can put in the values we know. And in this case, we know that he uses 15 in his potion and he's left with 17. So we can see that we've got a part whole problem where we don't know the whole amount, and hopefully you've been able to use a strategy that you've learned in order to solve that. Let's look at the last question. Harry needs 34 golden galleons to buy a new broomstick. He's saved 18 galleons so far. How many more does he need? And just like we've done each time, we're going to start with the bar and then describe the whole amount. And in this case, the whole amount is the cost of the broomstick. We'll split it into two parts again. The reason we've got it in two parts is because we've got how much he's saved so far and how much he still needs. So there we've been able to describe the whole and we've been able to describe the parts. Now that we've done that, we can put in those values that we know. And in this case, we know the whole amount is 34 galleons because that's the cost of the broomstick, and we know that he's saved 18 galleons so far, so that's one of the parts. So once again, we've got a part-whole problem where we know one of the parts, we know the whole amount, and we're trying to work out the other part. That helps us decide which strategy we're going to use in order to solve it. So hopefully you've applied one of the strategies that we've looked at previously in order to work out our answer. So now that we've had a think about that, what I'd like you to do is, with a partner, I want you to have a think about how we achieved success. What were the steps that we went through in order to analyse each one of those problems? So pause the video for 1 to 2 minutes and see if you can come up with those steps. Okay, so when we did analyse those problems, the first thing we did each time was we drew the bar. We drew that bar to represent what the whole amount was. And once we'd done that, we could describe that whole amount. We might not know the value, but we know what it is. And in the first question where we had Draco, the whole amount was the number of jelly slugs that he ends up with. And in the second question with Hagrid and his dragon eggs, the whole amount was actually how many dragon eggs he had to begin with. Once we've done that, we decide how many parts we're going to split the bar into. Now for each of those, we were splitting those bars into two parts. For Draco, part was how many sweets he started with, and part was how many sweets he got from his mum. And for Hagrid, part was how many of those dragon eggs hatched, and the other part was how many was still to hatch. Once we described those parts, we were able to put in the numbers that we knew. And in question 1, that was the 16 slugs that Draco started with and the 12 that he got from his mum. Whereas for Hagrid, it was actually the 21 eggs that he started with and the 12 that hatched. So there we knew the whole amount and we knew one of the parts. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to choose a strategy. Once we can see the part-whole, we know whether it's the whole amount or one of the parts that we're looking for. That is going to help us decide a strategy. And actually you can see there are only ever two possibilities with any addition-subtraction problem. Either you don't know the whole amount, in which case we can add up the parts, or we don't know one of the parts, in which case we can take away the other part from the whole amount, we could count on from the known part to the whole amount, or we can count back from the whole amount to the known part. Okay, it's your turn to try that out. We've got 3 questions again, and once again we've got mild, spicy and extra hot, only this time they look a wee bit different. Here we've got some questions and we've got different numbers in those questions. Now, if you're going to go for the mild, you're only looking at the yellow numbers. If you're going for the spicy, you're only looking at the green numbers, and if you're going for the extra hot, you're only looking at the red numbers. So, if I look at question 1 and I'm not too sure about it, I'm going to go for the mild challenge. There are 11 pupils altogether at flying practice, 7 of them are girls. How many boys are there? Okay, question 2. Now let's say I get to question 2 and I think I might be able to have a go at the spicy this time. So I'm just going to read the green numbers. Professor Snape has 29 golden galleons. Professor Dumbledore has 26 golden galleons. How many do they have altogether? And then lastly, we've got Hagrid collected some dandelion roots. He uses 75 in a magic potion. He now has 58 left. How many did he have to begin with? So that time I've gone for the extra hot numbers. I've gone for the red numbers. Now remember, when you look at the question and you're deciding which set of numbers to go for. Go for the numbers that are going to challenge you, not the numbers that you're going to find too easy, not the numbers that are way too difficult, numbers that you're going to find a bit of a challenge in order to analyse those. Now, the other thing to remember here is that we are not just solving these questions, we are analysing them first. So each time I want you to draw the bar, just like we did before, describe the whole amount, describe the parts, put in the value you know, and then decide on a strategy. Once you've done that, once you've analysed each problem and you've solved them, you can make up 3 problems for someone else to analyse and solve at your group. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at those. You've been able to analyse those problems by drawing the bar, by describing the whole amount, describing the parts and putting in the values that you knew. That should then have helped you make a decision about the strategy that you're going to use. Hopefully you've then been able to apply that strategy in order to solve them. Now that you've done that, I want you to reflect on the following questions. What have you learned today? What did you find easy or difficult? What did you get stuck at? What helped you when something got tricky? What do you need more help with? What is really making you think? And what are your next steps? So the last thing I'm going to ask you to do today is, as a class, I want you to analyse and solve the following problem. Luna had 36 fizzing Wisbies. Hermione gives her some more. Now she has 83 altogether. How many fizzing Wisbies did Hermione give her? So, as a class, I want you to discuss it. I want you to analyse that problem, draw the bar, describe the whole amount, describe the parts, put in the values that you know, and then decide what strategy you're going to use to solve it. And once you've done that, have a go at the following. Luna eats 28 of them. How many does she have left? Thanks for joining me again this week. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you've got any questions or you'd like to show me your attempts at today's lesson, then you can contact me at scott.morrow@southayrshire.gov.uk or at Twitter @scottmorrowsa. Next week we'll be looking at something different. We're going to be looking at division problems, so I hope you join me then.